That's what preseason is all about. And we were actually fortunate. We got a number of different situations, looks that you ordinarily don't get, certainly in the preseason.
Before we get into this one, if you are new here, welcome to Detroit Scope. And if you have been riding with us for a while, you already know the deal. We are chasing 1,000 subscribers, and every single one of you hitting that subscribe button right now gets us that much closer. So do that before we dive in, because trust me, you do not want to miss what Dan Campbell just revealed. Dan Campbell sat down with reporters after finally getting a chance to watch the tape from the Lions' preseason opener against the Bengals, and what came out of that press conference was a roller coaster. There was heartbreak. There was praise. There was a defensive back who came out of absolutely nowhere. And there was one gut punch of an injury update that could change the entire shape of Detroit's running back room heading into the regular season. So grab a seat, because we're breaking down everything Dan Campbell said, piece by piece. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly where this Lions roster stands heading into Game 2. Let's start with the tough news, because it's the story that's going to hit Lions fans the hardest. Running back Kye Robichaux, who had quietly put together one of the most impressive and durable training camps of anybody on this roster, appears to have broken a bone in his foot during the preseason opener. Campbell didn't sugarcoat it either. His exact words were something along the lines of, "God bless him. Dude, he's got a foot. Looks like he may have broken a bone in that foot." And what made this update sting even more is the way Campbell talked about Robichaux's camp leading up to that injury. This was a guy who had been so durable, who had played his heart out every single day. The kind of player who empties the tank on every single rep, whether the cameras are rolling or not.
He's super sharp, and he's quick, and he's really good at the second level. And then pass game is the anchor, right? He's just got to bend, and he's got to do, in a lot of cases, he's got to do double what somebody else does that has more stature, size or stature to him. That's the hand he's dealt. I thought he did that the other night. I did think.
And now, just as he was building real momentum toward a possible roster spot, his foot may have ended that push before it even had a chance to finish. If the fracture is confirmed, this is about as cruel a break as you can get in the NFL, where opportunities are won and lost in a matter of weeks during training camp, and a serious foot injury could realistically end his season and his chance to make this roster. And here's the thing. This injury didn't happen in a vacuum. It's part of a running back room that has genuinely been under siege for weeks now. Isaiah Pacheco is still out and is not expected back at practice this week. Sione Vaki has been working his way back gradually. And with Robichaux now added to that list, it's no surprise that Detroit went out and signed veteran running back Travion Williams just days ago to add some stability to a backfield that desperately needed bodies. Now you understand exactly why that move made sense. When your RB room starts looking like a MASH unit, you bring in a vet with 7 to 5 career games under his belt who can hold down special teams duties and soak up representatives while everybody else heals up. But it wasn't all bad news at running back. In fact, one name shined through all that chaos in a big way, and that's Jacob Saylors. This guy led the Lions in rushing in the preseason opener and tied for the team lead in receiving. And Campbell made it very clear afterward just how much he appreciated what Saylors brought to the table. Campbell said flat out that if there was anything positive to take from that game, Saylors was most of it. He called him a player with a little juice, and pointed specifically to his special teams value as the separator, reminding everybody that with Jumia Gibbs and Isaiah Pacheco anchoring the top of the depth chart, and Sione Vaki already established as one of the best special teams players in the entire league, that fourth running back spot on this roster is going to come down to who can contribute in the kicking game. According to Campbell, if Saylors wants to make this 53-man roster, special teams is going to be his ticket. And based on what we saw against the Bengals, he is making a real case. The one small hiccup is a minor ankle injury Saylors is nursing, but Campbell doesn't believe it's anything serious, more of a maybe miss it or two type of situation rather than anything that threatens his roster chances. Now let's shift over to the offensive line, because this is where Dan Campbell got genuinely excited during this press conference, and for good reason. When asked what stood out most on the tape up front, Campbell said that when this offensive line was doing things right, using proper fundamentals, working together, it was, in his words, pretty. He said the run game had a number of really good moments, specifically pointing to Saylors and Raheem Blackshear finding room to run, and that protection overall was solid across the board. But the headline here belongs to left guard Christian Mahogany. Campbell didn't hold back on this one. He called Mahogany a physical force, and said that when he plays it right, it's powerful, it's explosive, it's pretty to watch. That is about as high a compliment as you're going to get from Dan Campbell, a former NFL tight end who does not throw around praise like that lightly. Now, to be fair, this isn't a job that's fully locked up yet. Mahogany is still in an ongoing battle at left guard, with veteran Ben Barch working his way back into the mix and expected to get more and more representatives as camp continues. Campbell was refreshingly honest about Mahogany's inconsistency too, noting that he still needs to clean things up, particularly in pass protection, where his anchor sometimes gets a little out of sorts. But make no mistake, the flashes of dominance are real.
So this is an ongoing battle. I thought, I just mentioned this Mahogany, I thought he was a physical force, and when he does it right, it's pretty, and it's powerful, it's explosive, and in a pass game, he's got anchor, and then sometimes it just gets a little out of sorts, so it's just...
And if Mahogany can string together the consistency Campbell is asking for, this left guard job could very well be his to lose. Right behind that story is another lineman who might have been the surprise of the entire game. Center Seth McLaughlin. Campbell was asked directly whether many people expected McLaughlin to get this kind of opportunity, and Campbell's answer was fascinating. He explained that McLaughlin isn't a huge, physically imposing guy, so his game has to be built around playing low, playing quick, and being sharp at the second level. Campbell said McLaughlin essentially has to do double what some of these bigger, more physically gifted centers do just to hold his own, and according to Campbell, he did exactly that against the Bengals. Campbell said he thought McLaughlin anchored better than expected, strained on every rep, and tried to do all the little things right, which, coming from this coaching staff, is exactly the kind of description that gets you more playing time. Now, don't get it twisted. McLaughlin is not locking down that center job outright. Drew Scruggs is working his way back from a soft tissue injury and reportedly jumped right back in as the first-team center as soon as he returned to practice. But McLaughlin has officially put himself in the conversation, and that's a genuine win for a player who wasn't necessarily expected to be part of this competition at all just a few weeks ago. And let's be real for a second here. While we've got you thinking about how deep this roster battle is getting, this is exactly the kind of storyline you want to stick around for. So if you haven't subscribed to Detroit Scope yet, now is a great time to do it, because we are covering every single one of these camp battles as they develop. Moving over to the defensive side of the ball, one name that stood out from this presser was rookie defensive back Keith Abney, who made his official NFL debut against the Bengals. Campbell was genuinely complimentary here, saying Abney simply feels like a football player, a phrase Campbell doesn't use casually. He described Abney as instinctive, aggressive, and someone who never seems to think the moment is too big for him. On defense, Abney flashed real ability, and Campbell specifically praised his overall feel for the game. On special teams, it was a mixed bag. Abney worked at the jammer position and had a few moments where the coaching staff wants him to clean things up technically, but the overall picture was positive. This is exactly the kind of debut you want to see out of a rookie defensive back, someone who shows real football instincts even while there's obviously plenty of technical polish still to be added. Now let's talk about Ennis Rakestraw, because Lions fans have been anxiously waiting on an update since he left the game with that arm injury. The good news first. Campbell confirmed Rakestraw should be good, that the injury is not believed to be serious. But what's even more interesting is how Campbell broke down his actual play before he got hurt. Campbell said there were a couple of genuinely good coverage representatives from Rakestraw in that game. He specifically addressed one play where it looked like Rakestraw got beat. But according to Campbell, that one wasn't actually on him. It was a miscommunication on a 3rd and 16 situation where Rakestraw was supposed to have safety help underneath, and the mental error belonged elsewhere on the defense, not on Rakestraw himself. Campbell said he had a couple of really good challenge representatives on the outside as well, and that it was unfortunate they couldn't get a fuller sample from him before the injury forced him out. This is a meaningfully different picture than what a lot of outside reporting made it sound like. And if you're a Rakestraw believer, this presser should give you a little bit of hope that his tape was better than the box score suggested. But if we're talking about players who truly stole the show on defense, we have to talk about two names, Chris Smith and Ryan Cooper Jr. Let's start with Smith, because Campbell went out of his way to praise the kind of dainty, unglamorous work that never shows up on a stat sheet. Campbell explained that Smith does all the little things right, doesn't repeat mistakes, works his tail off in the off-season, and plays with real discipline. He specifically brought up one sequence where the Lions were only able to get 10 men on defense at the snap, and rather than panic, Smith recognized the situation and shifted himself to a zero-technique nose alignment to help balance out the front, even though it meant taking on multiple blockers by himself. Campbell called it a thankless job, a nasty job, one that isn't for everybody, but said Smith genuinely finds fulfillment in doing it because it keeps his linebackers free to make plays. That's the kind of unselfish, team-first attitude that coaches absolutely love, and it's exactly why Chris Smith has carved out a role on this roster year after year even without flashy stats. And then there's Ryan Cooper Jr., who Campbell brought up almost as an aside, but the story behind it was too good not to share. Campbell admitted that sometimes you don't catch every single player's impact live in the moment, because there's simply too much happening on the field at once, and that some guys only pop when you actually sit down and watch the tape. Cooper was exactly that kind of player. Campbell described a single play where Cooper delivered what he called a hell of a hit, forcing a fumble in the process. Campbell's exact reaction was priceless. He basically said, "Who is this guy? I know who he is now." That is the kind of moment that can genuinely change a young player's trajectory in a training camp. One violent, impactful play, seen by the head coach on tape, and suddenly a name that wasn't necessarily on the roster radar is now firmly on it. Let's shift over to the receiver room for a second, because Campbell had some interesting things to say there too. He described that room right now as an all-out battle, and pointed to a few specific standouts. Tay Martin reportedly showed up in a big way, not just with a one-on-one catch, but with quality blocking and real impact on special teams, including forcing a penalty on a return unit. Tarek Black, referred to simply as Black, was described by Campbell as intriguing and someone who made plays. Veteran Cedric Wilson is working his way back from a minor hip flexor issue, but even in limited representatives, Campbell praised him as a crafty, savvy veteran who simply knows how to play the game and can line up at multiple spots. And of course, there's Tom Kennedy, the ultimate camp survivor, who Campbell described simply as reliable and steady, the kind of quiet, dependable praise that speaks to just how much trust this staff has built in him over the years. Finally, Campbell touched on his growing relationship with new offensive coordinator Drew Petzing, and it sounds like things are clicking. Campbell said there were little natural things that came up during the game, wanting to get a certain player the ball, wanting to run behind a certain lineman, the kind of communication that happens between a head coach and a play caller as they build chemistry together. But overall, Campbell said everything between them was good, and that Petzing is exactly what he expected, someone who doesn't get rattled, stays in the flow, and is always thinking multiple plays ahead. Campbell even joked about how his own four-letter reactions during a game can carry different meanings depending on the context, and that Petzing is already learning to read those signals. It's a small, funny moment, but it speaks to a coaching staff that is building real trust heading into the regular season. So here's where things stand for the Lions right now. The running back room took another gut punch with the Robichaux injury, but Jacob Saylors gave Lions fans a real reason for optimism with his performance. The offensive line showed real signs of life, with Christian Mahogany looking like a legitimate force and Seth McLaughlin quietly making a case for himself at center. On defense, Keith Abney's debut was encouraging. Ennis Rakestraw's limited tape was better than it looked on the surface, and two names, Chris Smith and Ryan Cooper Jr., prove that sometimes the biggest impact plays happen in the trenches, away from the cameras, only to be discovered once the coaches sit down and watch the film. And in the receiver room, the battle for depth spots is heating up in a serious way. Alright, that's everything Dan Campbell had to say after breaking down the tape from that Bengals game. Let us know in the comments. Are you worried about the Robichaux injury? Do you think Christian Mahogany locks down that left guard job for good? And is Ryan Cooper Jr. a name we need to start paying more attention to? We are Detroit Scope, and we are on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers. So if you've made it this far into the video, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you deep dives like this one. Drop a like on this video. Leave your predictions down in the comments, and we will see you in the next one.